implementing WMS, defining best practices to modernize warehouse operations. I'm Steve with BDI, the event partner to First Line Software, the sponsor of this program. Today would not be possible without the support of First Line Software. All First Line people, please smile and wave your hands so we know who you are. Thank you. Look at all those good smiles. So with that, the floor is yours, Mike.
Okay, so everybody can hear me. I'm going to talk about three things: who I am, who First Line is, and also how First Line and ViaStore came to be as a partnership. My name is Mike Medaglia. I'm a vice president of First Line Software, where I've worked for almost 10 years. My background, going back more than 40 years, has been in building and implementing custom software solutions around the world, but also I have deep marketing, sales, and operational experience. First Line Software, however, is a boutique software engineering company comprised of more than 700 engineers located in Eastern Europe, providing full software development lifecycle for clients worldwide, including Fortune 100 companies and startups alike. With a management team that has been together for nearly 20 years and informed by agile development techniques since 2001, First Line's cutting-edge work spans warehouse management systems, e-commerce, healthcare, web content management, enterprise mobile, and even the hardware and firmware prototyping of IoT devices. However, as a ViaStore software implementation partner, First Line provides the full cycle of implementation services for the ViaDot warehouse management system. From the development of the solution architecture to the customization of your ViaDot system to complete integration, First Line can cover it all. First Line gained this direct knowledge of the ViaDot system's capabilities while contributing as an extension of the ViaDot software development team. This insight equipped us to provide guidance on which of the 2,500 ViaDot WMS functions could best support a customer's specific warehouse operations. But as for today's event, I'm most grateful to having been asked to moderate this distinguished panel and you, our distinguished guests. Our goal is to share with all of you our insights and best practices in implementing a world-class warehouse management system. Thank you.
So now let's introduce some members of the panel. Would Shantae like to start?
Yes. Hi, I'm Shantae Erickson, Vice President of Global Supply Chain at KBI Biopharma. We are a contract and development biopharma manufacturing organization with facilities across the US and also in some European locations. I've been in industry for 25 plus years in the supply chain space, the entire time in pharmaceutical, different organizations, large and small and startup. So right now we are expanding our warehouses. So this kind of was very beneficial when I was asked if I'd want to join the panel. I've definitely implemented warehouse management systems in the past, but also gives me an opportunity to kind of learn what's out there as we're looking to kind of embark on some of these journeys at KBI.
Wonderful, Shantae. Deepa.
Trying to find the mute button. So yeah, my name is Deepa, and I'm the Global Supply Chain Director of Boston Scientific, located in Orange County, California. I have been in supply chain and operations 15 years. I have a master's in industrial engineering. I've worked in automotive, electronics, and now in med device. Although I did not implement WMS in my Boston Scientific experience, in my previous experience, and I've either used WMS or directly was a plant leader when we implemented warehouse management systems. So very interested in seeing how companies have evolved and what are some of the difficulties that we are facing. I went through the whole change management process when we implemented WMS, and I know it's a big deal. So looking forward to hear everyone's thoughts.
Thanks, Deepa. Lauren?
Hey, my turn to find the mute button. So hi, my name is Lauren Barnes. I work for Phoenix Contact. I've been at Phoenix Contact now for 15 years, and in that role, I am the manager of manufacturing and logistics business systems analyst. We implemented a ViaStore warehouse management system in 2008. I was a part of that project, and we have done multiple upgrades and actually customizations as soon as 2019. We did a large, what we called LCA expansion, logistics center expansion, where we added additional cranes, technologies, loops, down declines, inventory, inbounding systems. And so I have a lot of experience with it from the IT side, also the supply chain side. My team is actually in the process now of starting a upgrade to our Viadat system. Our Viadat is Viastore's WMS system, and that will begin in Q4. And we're going to be moving from a very old version to the newest version that Viadat has. So I have a lot of experience with that. I have a lot of do's and don'ts from that experience. And I'm hoping that will make this project go a lot smoother than the first one. But everything that I can share, if there's any questions, I would love to. And I can't wait to hear everyone else's experience as well.
Thanks, Lauren. Matthew.
Thanks, Lauren. You did set up the expectation for that upgrade. So, so my name is Matthew Thoreau. I'm the Vice President of Sales Engineering for Viastore in North America, based in Michigan. So Viastore does provide a solution for automation. That's what you see in my background. So we do manufacture some of that equipment, or we integrate the other part of the equipment for ASRSs or any type of automation. And we obviously, since that's the topic for today, we also have our own software, and we partner with FirstLine on some of the implementation. So thank you for organizing that webinar. And we have, thousands of WMS in the world, and we're excited to present that to some of you.
Thanks, Matthew. And then finally, Vladimir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vladimir Lizashenko. I'm a Senior Vice President in FirstLine Software, and I'm in IT business for exactly 20 years, basically, being a software engineer in the past. And in FirstLine Software, one of my responsibilities is our strategic partnership with Viastore, and I'm very deeply involved in all the projects which we are implementing. And it's really exciting area, logistic and warehouse logistic. And we are meeting all the time, new people, new project, new businesses, new types of logistic, and it's always challenging. And especially during current time, because of COVID, we have additional challenges while we cannot meet with the people, while we cannot meet with the customers. So I'm really interested to hear from you, which challenges are you facing with how you're working with your warehouses? Which questions do you have?
Great, wonderful. And that's your panel. Mike, the floor is yours now. Mike, I don't know if you're muted.
I am. I guess everybody has to do that once. Lauren, you intrigued me with your statement about do's and don'ts for the upcoming upgrade you're going through. I think everybody would be very interested in understanding a couple of those do's and don'ts right off the top here.
Okay, sure. Honestly, the first time you implement a warehouse management system, no one can actually 100% prepare for that, especially when you're going from a very manual operation to a very automated operation. And that's what we did at Phoenix Contact. We had shelving and people would pick things manually and stuff. And we moved to ASRS cranes, like you saw on the back of Matthew's screen. And we went to receiving inbounding orders automatically into totes, putting it into inventory without people physically touching it. So there was a lot of information that we did to gather. So when it first comes, there's really not a lot of 100% preparing, but what you can do and what we have learned in past mistakes is for the don'ts, do not customize everything out of the box. I mean, from the beginning. So the biggest thing is everybody thinks they're so different and we need to do it this way. Learn the processes of the actual systems first. Learn what they do, because guess what? They were designed to do warehouse management. Not everybody's that different. So learn the software, learn the automation processes that they offer, and take those and implement them. Use them for a while before you decide to completely customize the system. Because what we found, and the don'ts are, we customized ahead of time thinking we were very different than most other customers, and we're really not. And we end up undoing some of those customizations because their software does work out of the box. Use your vendors that have, like the Viastores of the world, and people that know the software and trust that they know what they're doing and don't try to change that. That's a major don't that I think initially we thought, well, we'd like to see this button here or it to do this differently with orders. And we learned to maybe sometimes it's best to change your process slightly if the end result is the same as what you need it to do. So that was a big one. Dues, get people involved from the beginning. This is not an IT project. I know, Dennis, I wrote it down. How much should IT own a project versus supply chain? That was one of the questions that I saw in the chat. That to me, it is not just an IT project and it's not just a supply chain project. You really have to work together and you have to get people involved from the beginning. There's nothing worse than throwing bodies at it at the end and having people stressed out because they weren't involved from the beginning. So have those meetings, get people involved, ask questions, make sure people ask questions, and go through your processes from beginning to end and really focus on those processes and say, okay, is this truly how we want to do it in the future? Just because we do it like this today, does that make the most sense for the future? And go through those processes and absolutely take the functional spec writing very seriously. Look at it, go through it, take your time, make sure it's exactly at least as well as you think it can be for your company. And also think about your bottlenecks. Our bottlenecks are getting inventory out the door. We have a ton of cranes and stuff that hold 150,000 totes of inventory. But if you only have 10 pick pack stations to get it out, you can put as much in as you want. But if you're not getting inventory out the door, your bottlenecks are there. So just thinking about the whole system as a whole, getting those key users involved, not making it a supply chain only project, not making it an IT only project, and really working together makes all of the difference. And now that we have these key users, upgrading is so much easier because we have the experience. I'm not saying it's going to be the easiest thing we've ever done, but at least we know kind of where to start. So that's kind of some of my recommendations. I don't know if that was very helpful to anyone, but I would have loved someone to tell me that.
That was very valuable. Thank you very much, Lauren. Which I think would point us to Shantae. A question for you, since I think you've both done some WMS in the past and implementing one now. At this point in the process, has anything surprised you from your planning, Shantae? What was a surprise or two that you found once you began implementing?
I think our biggest surprise at this point is just understanding flow. Is like you think you understand what your flow needs to be, and then kind of walking through these processes. I think agreeing with Lauren, allowing your vendor to really help you understand that you're not as special as you think you are. And so that there's definitely ways to simplify flow, which makes not only bringing the system on be more efficient, but just for the team that is working around this every day, that they get efficiencies too, and that they start to learn how to really truly optimize space and simplify movement. And so for me, I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm learning.
Thank you, Shantae. Let me take it at a higher level here with deeper, if you will, deeper. As a professional with so much experience in organizational transformations, of which WMS is certainly qualifying, what observations can you share on how it impacts both the operational and the cultural side of a company initiating this level of digital change?
Thank you, Michael. I do agree. Warehouse management system implementation is a very big change for the company. And change management has to be the center of everything. When I was a plant leader and I was, it was a big part of our digital transformation. The plant was completely manual, and it was really straightforward to me that, oh yeah, I'm going to bring in WMS as a new plant leader. I want to make the biggest change and most impactful change. I am so glad I took a survey from the end users and people who are on the plant, and I underestimated the resistance that I would get from the plant. I thought it was straightforward. I thought it's going to be the best thing to do, but I saw, some people were just indifferent about it. They were just comfortable what they were doing. They were a certain set of people who were very scared that this is going to bring in too much efficiency, so they're going to lose their jobs. And there were a few people who were like, why do we need to change? Everything is going well anyways. So when I got that kind of feedback, the first thing that I did was just put together what are the positives and what kind of issues we may have. But I will tell you, you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. WMS can bring in a lot of benefits, operational side, inventory accuracy, better efficiency. You're not, the receiving gets, is better, the shipping is better, just the pulling process and the delivery process to the line is better. You know where the inventory is. But all this takes time. It's not magic. I just saw the last question from Steve where people voted that, most of the people voted that for more than 16 months, I think, or 16, I don't remember if it was months. That they're still facing difficulties in using WMS. It's okay. That happens. You are only going to see benefits out of warehouse management system after 2 to 3 years. And you would think that, wow, that's a long time, but that's what happened to me. And initially, in fact, you will start adding more people. I would say you may have to add more temp labor, but it will start to get better because remember, the system performs to what we ask it to do. So some of the bad habits when you're doing manual pulling and manual inventory counts where people are putting things everywhere, that has to change. People have to change. There has to be more discipline. So there's a learning curve, and then there's just the people management piece, but it's going to take at least 2 years before you start seeing all those benefits of inventory accuracy, better, more efficient workforce, and just things are going to start falling in place. So I think change management is a very big piece of deploying a warehouse management system, in my experience. You're on mute. Probably you should start asking $1 every time somebody's on mute.
Yes, that's to my local food bank for sure, Deepa. Matthew, with your background in operational management, can you share what you think the key challenges are for anybody implementing a WMS, and how do you actually prepare a future client for the implementation?
Thank you, Michael. That's a good question. And so I'm coming a little bit from the other side compared to you guys, because I'm the one providing the product and then working with you to make it happen in the implementation phase. So I appreciate your perspective. I think it's great what you said, Lauren, about trying to keep the product standard. I wish everybody would do that more. What I'm facing when we start talking about our software is the opposite. Obviously, everybody thinks it's different, and we start talking about customization a little bit too much. And there's a lot of convincing to do of what the right processes are. So I would say, to be successful in the implementation, there are probably 3 parts of it. One is preparation, documents the flows, include the stakeholders, and complete that functional analysis part of as good as you can, integrating all parameters, all special processes that you have. Don't try to make it too different from what the people are doing today. Because naturally people would tend to go for the path of least resistance. And if you're asking them to scan this product in this location and they're used to do it there, that will for sure create some issues in the future. So early stage prepare includes all the stakeholders, do the functional analysis, review your flows and everything. That's the first step. Second step is testing. There's a lot of testing that can be done before we even go on site. We need to make sure that, again, all the data is used in the testing, and real data, if possible. It's easy to do it in a controlled environment where we use data that we generate or examples from the past, but try to use the real data. The WMS will interface with many aspects of your operation. Obviously the ERP, but also some automation, but also some scanners, some logistics software you may have, or labor management, or MES, or many different products. So make sure you can do any test before you go on site. Test with real information. And again, manage the integration of automation and equipment. And I know when I say automation, I tend to think about what you have in my background, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be scanners, it can be printers, it can be equipment like that. You know, sometimes we do have 3D printers that we have to integrate, and that, you know, we want to make sure that the rejects are understood. We want to make sure that what happens if you got a false read, you know, we want to make sure of all this. So that's the second aspect, is testing, so that when we come to implement it on site with the people, we've tried to debug the product as much as possible. Third step is, I just said it, people. Clearly, it's a change management. Clearly, we need to prepare you know, the end user of that change. People, like you said, Deepa, may be resistant. People will be resistant. And it might be for more than the month of that we have in our schedule. That might be for 2 or 3 years, as you said. So we need to explain why using a WMS, what benefits, what challenges. And we need to work with people. We need to have training. And that's what First Line and Viastor will do. You know, we will do training before, we will do training during, and we will do training after. It has to be clear. We have to be able to be flexible and look at what we might have underestimated during the implementation and go back to the product and do an update, do a change in functionality, and do more training. So I think those are the key points. Again, prepare, functional analysis, include all the stakeholders, and understand the flows. Second one is testing. And then the third one is people, specifically training.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That's very involved, and we appreciate that. Let me take the conversation to Vladimir. Vladimir, with the many implementations of warehouse management that you've done with Viastor and with First Line, face-to-face communication was critical in those. But in times of COVID, and for the past 16 months, we've seen how a pandemic has flipped that model on its head. How have you and your teams accommodated this pandemic reality over the last year?
Good question. Thank you, Mike. If you don't mind, I will a bit change the flow. And I just want to support all previous speakers said, because it's really important, and everybody mentions that. I will answer your question, Mike, but just a second. Yeah, that.
Of course.
I'm flexible. I'm IT guy. You can excuse me. So basically, yeah, what's very important in all IT projects, and especially in the warehouse store, is that it's all is made to be used by people, right? So, and if you are doing such a complex project, you always should be focusing on how efficient it's for your users, for your employees, for warehouse people. Because if it won't be efficient, if it won't be useful, if it won't work for them, you will never get the level of efficiency you'd like to have. Yeah. So therefore, when you're choosing WMS, when you're choosing any kind of system, especially WMS, focus on that. And basically, what I wanted to mention before I will answer Mike's question is that if you will take a look on basically Via.ui, which it currently has, it's really made very, very extremely simple for everyone to use it. So if you know how to use iPhone, you will be able to use this system. So people is a key to efficiency to this story. So everybody said already about the training. Focus on that if you are going to implement WMS. So answering on your question, Mike, basically, definitely pandemic story. Yeah, it is at the moment still quite a tough time. Yeah, and in WMS implementation projects, it's very important to meet with the people. First of all, it's very important on the very initial phase to visit the warehouse itself, to see how it works now, if it already exists, of course. Yeah, to talk to people who are working inside of this warehouse, to understand what their pain points are, because out of that you will basically design and plan the project. Yeah, and at the moment we have just it's almost not possible to visit all warehouses. So of course we managed together with Viastor, we managed how to handle it. We are doing all this video conferencing and video tours in the warehouse, because we still, even online, want to feel how it works now. Yeah, which pain points they have. Second point, which starts to be even more important, and Matthew already mentioned that, is the trainings. When we had such ability, yeah, we were visiting our clients, we were basically preparing a training program, we were doing a list of sessions, training sessions, and so on and so forth. But now, again, yeah, we are all online. So we switched it a bit and we start training much earlier than we used to do it. Yeah, in the middle of the project, we already start training, basically training trainers. They're the most experienced people who will train their employees and so on and so forth. So training starts to be even more critical than it was previously. And of course, the third important thing is basically go live and support after go live. Yeah, at the moment we are focusing very strictly on supporting. We even been very focusing on that, but now since we cannot be nearby each of our clients, yeah, like we used to do previously, we are supporting them on a daily basis very strictly, especially during the first months or even year while they start working with our WMS, because it's very important again, and I want to come back to my initial statement that if you want warehouse to work efficiently, if you want WMS to be efficiency for your business, make sure that it's efficient and useful for each of your employee who is going to work with it. Hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Vladimir. You did, and you supported and reinforced some of the earlier responses as well. At this point, I'd like to just, I know when I attend webinars, some of the chat questions go unanswered. And I thought we'd just do a quick review and allow our panelists to just jump in with a sort of speed answer to some of these questions. And I'm looking at the impact of, this is a question, well, Deepa said the impact of WMS in different industries, but let me ask about this one. Where is the future going with WMS and how can we make it more user-friendly? Let's just take it right from the top. Lauren, please.
So the future of WMS, what we've found is automating some of the time-consuming or that involved a lot of people type thing is where we see most benefit for this. So what we were able to do is the inventory accuracy has been significant because we can do cycle counts throughout the year instead of having to close down and do them at the end of the year like some companies have done and we have done in the past. It allows us to increase our inbounding. For example, our inbound increased in 2008, we increased 400%. So we were able to reduce within 3 months, we were able to reduce the capacity of the amount of people we needed to inbound and move these people into other areas that would promote inventory out the door. So some of the tedious work that we had in the past goes away. So I see WMS in the future not replacing people's jobs, but allowing those people who might be doing a time-consuming or tedious type of job, do something more important to the business of gaining, increasing productivity, increasing sales, increasing value. So I think WMS systems can really take away some of that tedious work. You have to understand your processes before you go and make such a change. And I think that's what's scary to a lot of people is you're going from manually doing all of these things and knowing everything, but you have to trust the system. I mean, the system truly knows if you put good data in, you're going to get good results. So yes. Cleaning the data and knowing the data, understanding the data, and then trust the system afterwards and utilize it to benefit you. I definitely agree. It takes some time, but we've seen benefits really relatively quickly here at Phoenix with how much inventory we're getting out the door and getting in the door. So I think trust the system, know that there are benefits to it. And like Deepa said, people are scared they're going to lose their job. And you have to explain to them, it's not about losing their job. It's about making their job more important, more efficient.
And future-proofing their own jobs. That's right.
Exactly.
Let me continue with some of the other questions. The latest capabilities, Matthew, if you could quickly speak to some of the latest capabilities that perhaps are in Viadat.
Yeah, sure. So I see a few questions coming on that stream. So a few things. Future, yes, Lauren, you're right about what the benefit of the WMS would be, and I see Deepa, you put some benefits as well. I don't need to go back to this. Future of WMS to me is more integration. So WMS should be able to integrate more with your processes, the other softwares that could be used in your environment, in your operation. I gave the example earlier of the MES, which would be the manufacturing execution systems. An MES typically will work on optimizing the labor on your machines, will work on having your schedule, your spare parts. Some of you may be using one. If you have a smooth integration with your WMS, then you'll be able to manage your WIP, you'll be able to manage sequencing to each machine that will be live to your schedule. So any change that you have in your schedule will automatically reflect in your storage management, and it adds a lot of benefits like this. Clearly integration to the ERP. There could be integration to labor management. We have WMS that comes with labor as well. So you start not only managing the product, but you manage the people. See how many how busy people are, how many operations they do individually. And you can have a lot of functionalities that can be added to this, voice picking, light picking, and things like this. We see more and more a trend for the cloud. So, a few years ago, I would have said WMS on the cloud is good to manage like a standard operation, but when it comes to interfacing with equipment and automation, the cloud would be too slow in response time. That's not really true anymore. I think you can do everything on the cloud. Of course, if you follow the news, the last month have been interesting to watch with all the ransomware and the safety and security issue that the data may cause. So I don't know what the future will be. Obviously, being on the cloud might expose you to that kind of challenges. I don't know that, but I would expect the technology of the cloud to grow to bring more security as well. So that's also a trend that we see for that software. I think, looking at it from the provider, I'm trying to give that, a bit of a different perspective. I got questions that are fairly technical. Kane, you were asking, about the control tower. We do have MFC, we do have WCS to manage the automation from the WMS. At Viastor, we love our WMS that we call Viadat, but we also work with other WMSs sometimes when it comes to integrate the automation. So we have different options there. The GUI, you're talking about the flow, and then we'll document all the flow. We'll do some graphics to do this as a part of the functional analysis. So I think it's a bit detailed for that conversation today, but hope it helps with the trends that we see in the industry.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. There was a question on business value, which I think might be useful, and Deep, you answered it briefly here, but I'd like to also hear from Shante, given her pharmaceutical experience, how they would answer business value, or she would answer business value. Let me start with Shante.
Sure, and I definitely agree with the comments that Deepa made. For me, the biggest one, and what has been mentioned, is just to get to a level of inventory accuracy, going along with what Lauren said, that moves you away from having to shut your facility down and do a big annual physical inventory, but knowing that you can rely on that inventory, which then reaps further benefit, because if, in supply chain, as you're managing your procurement activities, if you can rely on your inventory, you can start to look at, how can I reduce my safety stocks? How can I work better with my suppliers? So it creates these triple effects. You're thinking this is just in my warehouse, but then you also see these other effects in your supply chain organizations and through your company that you can gain benefits. So something that seems as, and not simple, we all probably understand, as managing your inventory accuracy really can lead to a lot of other benefits up and down in your organization. I'd also kind of expand, and also on another one that was mentioned, was just, having the tool that is taking away some of the tasks that are those mundane tasks, and allowing your teams to really be able to focus on meatier things. It really kind of, over time, after you get through the pain of the change management, it really allows the team to feel like they're involved in bigger decisions, that they're bringing more value to the organization. So it can also lead to some satisfaction. And so when you're running these teams, you can see a lot of high turnover. This also could be an opportunity for where you can figure out more opportunities for folks to feel more efficient, to be doing other programs, to look at other ways to make things better and bring more job satisfaction and lead to turnover. So it's these small things, but it kind of has these ripple effects that you see over time that maybe you weren't truly expecting. You were just really looking at those simple things like, I'm going to have accurate inventory, but now you see these triple effects. And again, this takes time. It's not, you don't get that in the first year. You don't get there in the first month after you flip that button, right? But if you work the process, then you can start to gain those improvements throughout your supply chain organization.
Thank you, Shante.
And if I could quickly add
Yes.
to Michael, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but for people who are going to be rolling out WMS, I would suggest that there is a certain amount of pre-work that needs to be done in order to see these benefits. One, I'm sure most of you know this, but having a complete physical count done, looking at all your master data, because your system is as good as your data. If your data is not good, you're going to get bad results. And also looking at your racking and shelving system. I mean, is it set up right? I mean, do you need to rename them, renumber them, set it up as per your business requirements? Whether, what do you want to have on the high racks? What do you want to have on the low racks? And is the numbering done? I mean, you have to make sure all that is done ahead of time, so that you can start seeing the benefits later in a year after implementing WMS. So I think the pre-work is very important.
Thank you. And any other thoughts on business value beyond your comments and Shantae's?
Probably I would support what Deepa said, but a bit in other words. Yeah, basically the great value you will get out of implementation of WMS, also not immediately, but in a year, maybe in two, is data itself. Yeah, data itself, which are coming out of the system, which can give you ability to predict a lot of things inside of your business. Yeah, it's very, very important. And if you have a list of warehouses and your data are stored and you have already a bunch of data, you can make a lot of analysis on top of that and use it in your business, even out of warehouse logistics. So data itself is very great value at the moment.
That's a good segue into another question, and I'll let anybody who wants to answer it. That Mark tried to answer it as well. So with any complex system like WMS, there has to be integration into other systems such as ERP and other supply chain types of systems. How is that handled? How is it planned for? How is it? How easy or difficult is it to do? And what is the lead times and things of that nature? I leave it to anybody to respond.
I'd like to chime in there a little bit because we have a very old ERP system, and we thought it would be very difficult to integrate the WMS. But what we found is, and what I highly recommend because it worked well for us, is looking at the newer system, like the WMS system end of it. And if you have a new application like that, look at what they require as their standard interface. Look at the tables that are required for that. And then don't customize that end, customize the system that's really old that doesn't have an interface, a standard interface, and say, okay, what do I need in here in order to talk to the WMS? So we truly worked well with the vendors and stuff and said, okay, what do you need? And then if we had to send additional data, you could tweak it here and there, but start with the WMS system because it already knows what fields are required for it. And then just, instead of customizing both ends, kind of start with the newer system, know that it probably knows what it's doing, and then feed the data into it. So we found that to be very valuable. And that's how we plan on doing our upgrade to here coming in the fall. So that I found to be very valuable. And it was a good decision that we made. We weren't sure if it would be a good decision. And I agree with everybody in the fact that the most important part, even when it comes to the interface, is making sure your data is accurate, because garbage in, garbage out, we all hear that, but you can't say that enough. I don't think enough people put enough time and effort in data cleansing, and that might be the most important part of the project.
Okay, thank you, Lauren.
I was going to add to that too and say, really understanding like you're describing there, Lauren, those capabilities, like what do you need in one system versus another system, and taking the time to sit down and map that out with the impacted parties or functions that you're handing off to. I know I was involved in an experience where we didn't take the time to do that. And then when we went live and a few months down the road, we realized that data was getting stuck, right? The information wasn't going between the two systems like we thought. And we had all this collection of manual push throughs that we had to end up doing. So I would just highlight that it's really important to understand, what data needs to live where, how are you going to integrate it, and that you really make sure you draw out that requirement and you test it before you go live, to make sure you're not creating these little fun pockets of lost information that didn't make it through the integration piece.
Absolutely. And one other thing I'd like to add is what is we found very important is, and I don't know if you had this experience as well, but trying to having a host system, like everything from our ERP sends to the WMS. So if the WMS needs routes or carriers or whatever, even if your ERP didn't have it, create tables there and send it one direction. So you don't have something over here in WMS, something here in Bond, and they're different because you have to set them up in two places. Keep your data flowing. Now, granted, you're going to have information coming back, like the inventory was adjusted into your ERP, but everything sends from one and tells the WMS what to do, and then the WMS sends back the transactions. And if you can keep that data in one place instead of having duplicate data in two different areas, oh, we forgot it was over here and now it's different. That really makes a difference.
Thank you. And Matthew, a quick question for you. Clearly, what are the most common integrations are required with Viadat that you've experienced, and what was the most unusual?
That's a good question. I don't know. The most common is like Rowan, you said. I mean, the WMS can be very standard when we manage storage and we have standard transactions that we have already prepared. That can be a quick and easy project. Focusing more on the people aspect and the flows aspect more than the product itself. That's what we try to make common. I'm trying to find an example of an unusual.
Do you find that ERP is the most common API integration you need to perform, or is it?
Yeah, but typically, like you said, Lauren, I mean, the example of Phoenix Contact is a good one because you guys use like a unusual ERP and an old system, and yet it was not an issue. I think the interface with ERP is pretty standard. We can manage that with data interfaces that are not too challenging to build. So I don't think the real challenge is there. We can interface with ERP. Challenges are more when you got like a lot of very specific operations, when you have a lot of different kind of equipment to manage, and a mix of automation and manual. That's where it becomes more challenging for the people, And then we talked about the data, which requires some cleansing. Absolutely, yes. Another issue we're having sometimes is like we can't read the data. We have a lot of rejects. We have a lot of misprocessed on the people not using the scanner the right way, or even like labels not being right and things like that. So it does require some cleansing on your data, but it also requires some cleansing on your processes.
All right, thank you, Matthew. There's a new comment here from William Chen. Talks about important components, and he lists one, of course, people, process, system, data. But management and leadership support, and that resonates with my experience, that you had to have an important senior champion, if you will, so that everybody in the organization knows that this is an important project and that they should support it intuitively. From our panelists, any comments on how to align champions and the vertical support of a large-scale WMS application?
Well, you need to have, first of all, everything starts with leadership. They need to understand what goes into implementing a warehouse management system. And I'm not saying the details, but at least at a high level that this is a big transformation that everybody needs their support, and set an expectation that it's not going to be an overnight change, and that a lot of work needs to be done. Once that top level, we have that support, the most important thing would be to pick the right project manager to roll out the transformation. Person who has experience doing this and who can bring in, all the other stakeholders, whether it's IT or supply chain. It's not an IT project, or it's not just a supply chain project. Everyone needs to come together to make this a success. So really having that project manager who has experience driving a change like this is going to be very important, in my opinion.
Okay. Shante, perhaps you can add some thoughts on leadership and support of the application implementation.
Absolutely. I do think that you also need to have that sponsor that is clearly dedicated to getting this implementation done, right? Like, there has to be a person who's going to be able to make the hard decision or give the motivational speech when the team feels like they're not getting to where they need to be. And I think being able to identify that person and then make sure that the team knows that that is the go-to person is critical. Otherwise, if there feels like there's no person that can help really drive it through, and I agree too with Deepa, like having that strong project manager and then having that sponsor. Between those two things, I think like that's really how you kind of keep going when you hit those speed bumps or bubbles that you kind of need to burst, or maybe move a little critter out of the roadway to ensure that folks are safe.
We call that barrier busting, right?
There you go.
Someone's going to bust those barriers.
Block and tackle, right? But I think that's critical. And if you don't have that, or if you're seeing that your sponsor is somewhat engaged, but has a lot of other things on their plate, and you probably want to reevaluate if that's the right person, or is this the right time? I would strongly suggest that, because it's really, it will become problematic if they're not available or not really dedicated to the task.
Okay. And we're coming up close to a breakout room session. Let me ask our audience, are there any other questions you'd like while the panelists are all assembled here? Anybody at all? Okay. Then let me ask Vladimir, for you, sir. Given that you work for First Line, yet ViaStore is the application, what makes the difference between First Line and other WMS solution providers? Why is First Line unique to this situation?
Basically, it's because of really strong and deep partnership with ViaStore. Because we are initially at the company, we are basically a software development company. But with ViaStore, and you already mentioned it, we also started as a software development supplier. But in fact, as an integration partner, which is working with ViaStore clients, in comparison to other integrators who can use different WMS systems, we are very deeply involved in development of this WMS. First of all, we have all access to the source code and to the knowledge how it's built and what it can. So we can support you in customization, we can support you in trainings, we can support you in the integrations. So we are basically, as a team itself, even if we are under the different brands, ViaStore and First Line, basically as a team which is working on this project, is basically the same one team which is working for you, because the whole this team knows everything about the capabilities of this WMS, has all accesses to source code and training materials, and can support you in any and different questions. So this is probably my answer for that.
Thank you so much. Steve, I think we're right back at you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike and panel. Great job.